Hi guys, and welcome back. Today we're going to work on preparing two canvases. This is something that I like to do while I am preparing to start new paintings, and I thought I would share it with you today. We're going to be using some 9 by 12 blank canvas panels that are white. And then I'm going to be using a variety of brush sizes, particularly a larger brush like a 1/2 inch or a 3/4 inch brush. I like to have poster board. You can get poster board at the Dollar Tree. The reason I like to have the poster board down is it protects your surface and it can gather any spills or messes while we're working with acrylic. I like to wear an apron, and I'll be using a blank palette. You could even use a paper plate if you didn't have a palette. And then I like to have a few poster boards on the ground beside me because that's where I put these newly freshly painted canvases while I'm working. So if you don't want to use canvas panel, that's fine. A blank white canvas will do just fine. You can use any size that you prefer. I like to work with a 9 by 12 because it gives a broader space for me to work with, but feel free to use an 8 by 10 or whatever you have on hand. My lessons are going to be designed to be fairly easy and inexpensive. You can find most of the supplies that I use either at Michael's craft store, on Amazon, or even at Walmart. I like to use the Artist Loft brand acrylic paint to start with, or the Royal Langnickel Essentials acrylics. So either of these will be great for entry-level students. They're thick enough that they work well and they mix well, and they're not too thin of a consistency, and they're inexpensive. Again, with the brushes, the canvas panel, poster board, and a blank palette, you can find any of this stuff at Walmart, Michael's, Amazon. So it shouldn't cost you too much to get started with painting. Today I want to prep two canvases. I usually work on anywhere from 2 to 5 paintings at the same time. And so I thought I would share how I do my backgrounds with you today. This is an important lesson. It took me years to figure this out, but what we're going to do is we're going to prepare canvases. So when I prepare a canvas and I do a mixed background, it's going to give my painting a lot more depth. As you can see, I started with a mixed background on this painting, and it was full of purples and pinks, and you can see traces of that within the water of these waves, and it just makes a much richer painting with more depth. And same thing with my flower paintings and different abstracts that we'll get into in this course. So first day is preparing backgrounds. Here we go. I like to use a couple of colors. So I'm going to set one of these canvas panels aside, and I would also recommend that you have maybe 2 or 3 canvases at your easy access, okay? So what I do is I start with a couple different colors. So I'm going to use a blue. This is an Essentials by Royal Langnickel, and it's just light blue. And then I'm going to use an acrylic white. So I'm going to add lots of white here. And this is going to be fun. So it's going to look messy when we start, but we're going to be doing lots of mixing. Okay, and then I'm going to also throw in this light olive green. So green and light blue and white are going to mix and come up with some sort of turquoisey colors. So this is the fun part. I'm going to get a slightly dampened brush. This could be a little bit damp. And I'm kind of rubbing out the excess water. I like to use just an old towel. It's totally fine to dab that on. I've sort of placed a little bit of color onto this canvas board, And then I'm just gonna start painting, okay? So there's no real rhyme or reason of how to do this. It's every artist's expression. So this is a good way to start painting. Okay, so I'm just gonna mix a little bit of blue. And I had a drip of green in there, so you'll see it's starting to get a little bit of green. And then maybe I'll swirl a little bit of this green and white. So this side's gonna come out a little bit lighter. And then we're just gonna be doing lots of mixing until we come up with some colors that we're really liking. As you can see, I have quite a lot of paint on my paintbrush, but I'm not gonna rinse this paint out. I'm going to use it because I wanna come up with different blends of these colors. Okay. So this would be a great background for a garden painting, any sort of abstract painting. It's going to come up with lots of light colors to one side because I have all this white here, if you remember. And then it'll be a little bit darker heading out this direction where there was so much blue. This could be a nice beach scene later. It could be, like I said, an abstract, or we can do flowers over it. And just kind of see what we come up with. This is the part of art that I love. Just the mixing, the blending. Now, if you feel like your paintbrush is getting way too much paint on it, this is a time where you can easily dab some of that off over on your palette. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend rinsing it out because we still want to come up with these nice colors, and the only way we can do that is if we have that paint on the brush. Okay, as you can see, my canvas is turning really light and pretty green here, and I'm liking this. You can go ahead and start swirling it around, and that's going to give you a nice mixture. Now I'm getting a really full-bodied color here because I put a ton of paint on this canvas to show you. If you want more distinctive colors, then I'm going to show you how to do that as well. This right here is turning into a really nice green. I think I'm going to keep this guy. I think this will be good to show you guys flowers and leaves later on. So I'm going to keep this green. Looking good. Okay, now I'm going to rinse this brush out finally. I'm going to set this canvas to the side on one of those poster boards I was telling you about. I like the color green that it came up with. It's really sort of, it's not really minty, but it's just like a nice, you know, lime sorbet color. So I've set that canvas aside to start drawing. Now I'm going to show you what you can do with a little bit of more distinctive color. So I'm going to use some purple, some dark purple this time. This is an Artist Loft violet. And then again with white, I like to use a lot of white when I'm doing these backgrounds. This is Royal Langnickel acrylic white. Grab a big brush again, rinse out that one that I was using, but I'm going to grab a different one this time. And then maybe we will also throw in, let's see, a little bit of just like a hint of red. And this time, I'm going to take a different brush, go ahead and dry it out just a little. This time I want to come up with something that is a bit darker in certain areas and a bit lighter in certain areas, just to show you. So I'm going to mix these right on the canvas. This shouldn't get too messy for you. You don't need excessive amounts of the paint, but you do want enough that you can get a nice mix. So, all right, so that is kind of nice. This color is turning into sort of a maroon color. I'm gonna tip this up so I can finish these edges here. We're looking really red on one side, looking more purple on the other, more violety on the other side. So that is nice. And then now I'm gonna mix in this white over here. So I don't rinse out my brush again. I'm gonna keep just introducing this white. And this is how you can prepare a canvas for a nice painting of dark and light, because sometimes you want to, you know, have natural light sources in your painting, but you don't want to just reinvent the wheel and try to like make it up in your head. And so how you can do that is you can make these nice backgrounds. Okay, so this is looking good. And now I've put a lot of white on the bottom, and so I want to bring in more of this dark color. So I'm going to take a little bit of this off the brush by dabbing it on my palette, and then I'm going to grab some more purple. And I'm going to just try to pull this purple and red downward to mix into the white. All right, so I'm going to try to darken this up just a bit up here. So we've got several different colors going on. And in our next lesson, I'm going to probably work on some flowers and some oceanscapes. So you'll see what I use these for and how I use these backgrounds. But today we're just working on preparing these backgrounds. Okay, so it's getting kind of messy because I got a lot of paint going on. But I'm starting to really like this because I'm getting some different shades. And let me pull a painting to show you what I'm talking about. And then you feel free to do your own color mixing, your own color choices, I should say. If you want to go with more blues, more pinks, more yellows even. When you're starting out with this, you can use just a little dot of color because you're going to be a little bit unsure about how much color to get on the canvas. That's how I started out. But over time, you realize that you can do all this mixing directly on the canvas, which is super fun. Okay, so let me grab two examples to show you how these backgrounds look later. Okay, I'm liking that there's a natural dark and light here. And then there's some medium tones, so I think it's a good mix. So I'm going to stop here. Now I want to show you one of my first paintings with this when I figured out how to do these backgrounds. And so I used a ton of blues, a little bit of pinks even, some whites, and just mixed before I ever put the vase and the flowers and the roses on this painting. So as you can see, you have a really dynamic background with color mixing. So that's what we're trying to get to, something like this. And again, something like this, where we're pulling those colors back out later. All right, guys, so we're gonna let those dry, and then lesson 2 will be right up, and we are gonna start adding something to these canvases.